Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee here, and we're going to talk about the fact that sometimes things need to be looked at closer in the short range than in the long range. And I've said it a couple of times that uh, everybody is focused on 5 days out, 7 days out, 10 days out, and then they forget to look. And I have to admit, even I didn't look as close as I probably should have with regards to the first lead wave that's going to be affecting some areas possibly Thursday night into Friday. And as we've gotten closer to the event, the European model has been showing this for a number of days now, and we have the NAM model now in range, and the Canadian model, which was also hinting at all this, has gotten a little more bullish. So I want to take you through this and show you. This is the NAM model. We're close up. This is Thursday afternoon, so we already have cold air in here, and you can see that there's some light snows breaking out in the Ohio Valley. And then during Thursday night into Friday morning, that snow area, and this is supposed to be a radar presentation, expands somewhat across the eastern half of Pennsylvania down into northern Maryland, much of New Jersey, over Long Island, and into most of Connecticut and the Hudson Valley. And if you look right here, this is a lead wave that is developing east of the North Carolina coast. Now, this is not going to wind up being any kind of big system by any means. I think this could wind up maybe being a coating to a couple of inches for some places in the affected area. Based on what I'm looking at now, this model volatility has been very difficult to handle to a large degree, and the big issue has been the suppression of cold air, how much cold air is actually going to get in. Now, here's the GFS, which for the first time actually brings snow. Here's its view, and you can see after. Let me just back up. So this is our soaking rain for Tuesday. And by the way, I'm really happy about the fact that we're getting an event like this because we seem to be chipping away little by little at this drought situation. So this is going to be a good soaking rain for the daytime on Wednesday as low pressure heads excuse me, into the eastern part of the Ohio Valley, and then a low redevelops off the New Jersey coast, and then they all go into Canada and have one big party, and that brings down cold air. Now, the GFS brings down probably more cold air than what the Canadian and European bring down on that first shot. So here's that wave, which it now develops, and while it's further out, and it never really brings any snow up much further north than, say, central New Jersey, this is as close as it's gotten in any of the prior runs. So if I go back just to later today, you can see the difference here for the same time frame. And let's go to even to last night, which had it way out. I mean, you can't even, it's not even close. So that's last night. Here is midday today. Here is late afternoon. And here is now. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's now. This was late afternoon. Okay, and here's now. So each run, the surface low is either west or west-northwest of the prior run. It'll probably adjust a little bit more to match the other two models. Now, here's the Canadian, which is especially interesting because it has that wave tucked in to just right along the coast. And this is Thursday night, Friday morning, 1 a.m., where it's got snow breaking out across New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and through much of northern Virginia, Delaware, and into Maryland. And then you can see that area kind of expands, and then the low moves out and the snow ends. Now here's that second wave on the Canadian. And while it takes it just offshore, it's a near miss. Let's look at the prior run to see a comparison. We'll go to the prior two runs. So this is 2 runs ago. And then this was the one from midday today, which was actually even further out. And then suddenly it jumps it back a little bit further to the west. I mean, it still, I think, would be a near miss. But the Canadian does imply that there will be, some snows in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and into northern North Carolina and western North Carolina, and even parts of east central North Carolina with rain along the coast. Now, I'm going to just defer at this point with regards to the second wave because I think that really ultimately is going to depend on what the first wave does, because there's only so much room in the atmosphere for weather systems. And if the first wave winds up being more important. It could suppress the second wave. There could be other impacts that we're not seeing at the moment. But when we look at the upper air on the Canadian model, it's much different than the GFS. The Canadian has a much more, not a whole lot more, but much more of a dynamic look with this upper air trough that's coming in for the weekend. This really brings down the main shot of cold air. And if you look back right in here, there's a little bit of a kink that's in that upper flow. So you've got some energy here that's trying to lift up, and there you have the main vortex that's going to be moving east. Now, the fact that it's moving along from west to east, showing more progression, tends to favor the fact that this thing would be further out. We're not seeing this kind of dig down more and lifting it up northward along the coast. That could be a function of the fact that the North Atlantic Oscillation is relaxing a little bit toward neutral as we go into this weekend, based on the forecast that I saw earlier today. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the case in subsequent runs, but we'll see. When you look at the upper air on the GFS by comparison, you can see the difference. The flow here is not nearly as sharp. It's a lot more gentle. So any surface wave on the GFS would develop and go way out, and indeed that's what the GFS model tends to do here. So we'll put the surface up, and then I'll show you the snow maps just for laughs. But there's the second wave on the GFS, which is even further south and east on this run than it was on the the last run. It takes the lows way out to the south. And again, this would be, this actually would make some sense, considering, if it does a little bit more with this first wave, the first wave then brings down more cold air, and that cold air becomes more important, and the next system is suppressed further south. I mean, the GFS has it snowing into coastal North and South Carolina out of this, as this big high moves on in. So, let's take a look at the snowfall maps on the models, and I'm just going to back it up. Now, the GFS, remember, doesn't bring it up, the first system, very far to the north, so it cuts off, coating to a couple of inches through central New Jersey, a dot over eastern Long Island, and extreme southeastern New England. The NAM model, which I'll put up now, the NAM model only goes out to Friday morning, so there's probably going to be one more period of 3 hours or so of additional snow here. But the NAM model has a coating to a couple of inches. I think we'll probably see this better if I go close up. So let's go close up on the northeast, and you can see it here on the NAM. It's basically a coating to a couple of inches. The GFS, just to review again for our purposes, really doesn't, in the first wave, only gets it now up to central New Jersey. But remember, it's been pushing northward with every run. And the Canadian, which is the most bullish in terms of snowfall, actually has some pockets of 2 and 3 inches down in southern New Jersey, and 1 to 2 inch snowfall throughout for New York City, Long Island, and coastal Connecticut. And then when we add the second system, because the Canadian model brings it close, it actually puts down several inches over eastern Long Island, and quite a bit, 6 inches plus, over southern New Jersey down into Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula, and eastern Virginia. So at this point, I would say that I'm going to wait to see what the European does with regards to the first system. I'm probably going to focus a little less attention on the second one until I can get a feel for how this first one's going to come out, and then I can piece together what's happening with regards to the second system, if there's going to be one. I'm going to just go real quick on the longer term, because I haven't really looked at it, to tell you the truth, and up until now. So we're going to look at it together at the same time. So I'll just give a quick analysis here. Excuse me, I've been fighting a head cold for the last 4 days. So here we have the systems here for the middle part of the week, and then you have this gentle trough on the GFS, which then lifts out, and then you get a bit of a ridge that builds, and now you have a vortex that it wants to form just west of Hudson's Bay that it rotates around, and then it lifts up and out. Now you've got this big blocking high that develops again in the Atlantic late in the period. The flow to me looks not all that exciting. After we get this cold shot into next week, looks like maybe things are going to moderate a little bit. See, we seem to be transitioning into something else in the longer term on the GFS anyway, and on the Canadian, it wasn't out far enough. Now it actually is out somewhat. So let's see what the Canadian does, at least through days 7 and 8. But you can see the Canadian's trough is more defined as it moves through, then lifts out. You don't get as much ridging on the Canadian through the middle of next week. You get some. It is there, but the flow is now more westerly. So again, this would suggest maybe a warm up coming later next week until the rest of the pattern seems to align itself up in Canada. So let's leave it there. Check out the latest posts on meteorologistjoechaffee.com, and you can download my app and subscribe to my local forecast for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, and Eastern Pennsylvania. It's just 99 cents a month, and the app is free. And I appreciate all of you being on here, whether you take the app or not. I do appreciate you very much being a subscriber to my YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It's free. It'll always be free. Videos will always be up there, no charge.